Hello, and welcome to Coulee Bank's podcast, Financially Free Gen Z. I'm Emma.
And I'm Rachel.
And today is our inaugural episode of our podcast where we'll be discussing all things finance and money for Gen Z.
Today we're going to be talking all about budgeting, the importance of it, some different strategies you can use, and then we're going to be sitting down with Eric Gatz, a retail banking manager at Coulee Bank, to hear about his perspective and experience with budgeting. Emma, have you ever seen one of those TikToks where it says, I know that the money will come back, but I'll never be 20 years old, living in Italy, sipping wine on the ocean? Have you seen those ones before?
Every time I open up TikTok, yes.
Exactly. And I see them and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I need to go move to Europe and abandon all of my finances and make reckless decisions because this is the only time that I'm young and I'm unattached and I can do that. But I just read this article in Bloomberg that talked a lot about this whole mindset that young people have. And it's something that we've seen for years. It's not something new. It's not something that is new with Gen Z. But it talks a lot about how you don't necessarily have to have this like binary form of thinking of I can either spend all my money and enjoy my life, or I can save my money, never go out to eat, and just like have a boring 20s.
Right.
It was saying like there's a gray area and there's somewhere in the middle. It's not like all or nothing.
Okay.
And you can still like go and travel to Italy. You just have to be more cognizant of how that fits into your financial goals. And so it had some really good tips and information on kind of how you can do that and how you can do that specifically through budgeting.
Awesome. I was actually doing some research on spending habits and budgeting, especially for our generation. And according to the Harris poll, young Americans are more likely than older generations to have experienced regret about their personal spending. I wasn't really surprised by this as some 22-year-old. I definitely have spending regrets.
Yes.
I would say weekly.
Exactly.
More than weekly, but 83% of Gen Zers and of millennials say this compared to only 60% of Gen X and 49% of boomers.
Wow.
Which is pretty...
Yeah, that's like
a lot.
vastly
Like, there's a lot.
different. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I definitely experience this myself pretty much every time I go to like Starbucks or Caribou. I started drinking only like I'm not doing normal dairy. And so I always get an alternative dairy, they call it. And all of a sudden, my drinks are like always $7. I'm like, geez, that was a bad choice.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be something like that. Like, I know I walk into Target and I always stop in the little dollar section and I find a little jar that I'm like, this would look perfect in my bathroom or perfect in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not serving any purpose in my life except for that it was just $3 to $5.
Exactly. And then in a few months, it ends up getting donated because you're like, turns out I didn't actually need this.
Right. So then, more than a quarter of people say they feel this way about their spending often or always. And good to know, Rachel, you and I are part of that quarter of Gen Zers. So, another thing I feel a lot of regret around is dining out, and eating out, and I'm not alone. More than half of Gen Zers feel this way, so.
Wow. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be dining out. Like there's definitely always a place for that. I think we just need to be more smart about budgeting and thinking about when we're doing it and not having it be such like a automatic like, oh, I'm sitting on my couch and I want Buffalo Wild Wings, but I don't want to drive to Buffalo Wild Wings. I want them to
Right.
bring me Buffalo Wild Wings. And then I'm spending an extra like $10 for it to be
Just
brought to my
delivered.
door. Yeah.
Right. Like a $15 meal quickly turns into 30 or
Uh-huh.
more.
Mhm.
And that's where the regret comes in. I feel like dining out shouldn't be a regret if you uh, are grateful for what you do and it's something
Yep.
that you're working towards. So,
Today we're going to talk a lot about budgeting and different strategies for it, different times in your life that it's important, and we want to focus on why we do this. And so we're not talking about budgeting because we never want to be able to go to Starbucks again or because we never want to go out to eat with our friends on a Friday night. Like, those are all things that we both love doing and are
right.
planning on continuing doing. Like, that's not going to stop, because we think that we should focus on budgeting. Um, Budgeting is a way for us to continue to do all those things, but to do it in a way that is smart and supports our financial goals for the future.
I think something important too is that, it's aligned with our like our values almost,
Yeah,
where, we can splurge on the things that we really enjoy and be a little bit more mindful of the things that don't really serve a purpose for us.
definitely. Kind of those wasteful spending categories that we don't even realize are happening. Budgeting really allows us to develop money saving strategies where we can minimize financial burdens that come from emergencies. So, things like job loss or car problems or housing issues, like all of these things that you don't see coming, but you want to be ready for, budgeting allows you to set yourself up for that.
I will second that you really never know when these are
No.
gonna pop up in your way. And in the last 3 months, I've had to get two new tires. I've had to get a dent taken out of my bumper.
No.
My sunroof shattered, and all of these things. You never can foresee them. You don't know
No.
you're gonna hit a nail or
Nope.
two. You don't know that a rock's gonna come through your sunroof.
How did a
You don't
rock
know.
come from the sky?
Someone must have just tried to throw it over the house. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and these things always come at the worst times too. I think I was talking to my husband about cars just a couple days ago, and I was like, I think we've spent like $15,000 to $17,000 in the last year on cars and repairs and gas and all of that stuff, and it's just
Oh,
such a
it's a
huge expense.
never-ending cycle.
But you wanna be able to think and prepare for that and not have it be something that totally throws you off,
Right.
from reaching your financial goals.
That can be even more damaging.
Exactly. So, budgeting really does help you to meet your long-term goals, whether that be advancing your education. So, say you wanna go to college or you want to get your master's, those are things that cost a lot of money, and you can try to help prepare for by budgeting. Say you want to rent an apartment where you're living, or you want to buy a house, or someday you're going to want to retire. These are all things that we can start thinking about now and preparing for our future to set us up for the best chances of success.
Yeah, and I think the next thing is that it's super important to start off early. Definitely in your teen years, I think that this is a great place to implement these different strategies, and then really just build habits from there on. One big thing that I know from my personal experience is that parents do a lot of influential things for their children. And if parents can lead that example with budgeting, for example, for their children, um, I feel like it has a greater success.
Yeah.
Um, and, like when you're younger, it might be harder to get a job. I know, maybe not fast food is always the most appealing thing. It never really was for me. Um, I stuck more to the babysitting route. My brother did a lot of mowing lawns, shoveling snow.
My cousin who just turned 14 got his first job at Chick-fil-A, which I didn't even know it was legal to do that kind of stuff at 14, but he's pretty excited.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's super fun to be younger like that, have less responsibilities, and,
Mhm.
be able to have spending money or saving money, kind of do your own little thing. It gives you more freedom.
Mhm.
Um, Another big thing I think that a lot of people don't realize can be helpful to make a little bit extra money or just, help out your community is going around to the older people in your community and picking up sticks, offering to pick up sticks after storms. I feel like that's
Uh-huh.
something my dad always sent me out to do, and I didn't love
Cute.
it, but it was, helpful, and can't mow the lawn
Mhm.
if there's sticks all over it.
Yep.
But while you're making money in your younger years, I think it's important to record your income and also your savings in a physical spot. A lot of things can get overlooked digitally, and I know that that's kind of an overwhelming trend, moving more digital.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, but this can also help you kind of find out where you want to spend your money and how it's kind of going. And then there's going to be more responsibilities as you get older. In your young teen years, you don't really
Mhm.
have much to deal with. But then you're going to hit 15, 16, you're going to start driving.
Yep.
Gas is pretty expensive. You're going to want to
So
be able to
expensive.
you're going to want to be able to fill up your gas tank if you have
Mhm.
that luxury. So,
Yep. Yeah.
definitely never too young to start saving and start budgeting.
The next stage that it's really important to be budgeting is in the college years. And this kind of time can look different for everybody. Some people might not have a lot of income coming in during college. Some people might be in unpaid internships. Some people might be in paid internships who do have more income coming in, as well as those extra jobs on campus. So it can really look a lot different for everybody. But no matter what your stage is while you're in college, it's important to be budgeting. It's important to be recording your weekly and monthly income and expenses for a few weeks before you start preparing your budget, just so that you know where you are. And this is something even today that I'm working on, my husband and I are working on, tracking our spending, seeing how much we're spending so that we can get ready to build our budget.
Yeah, I was
Um,
going to say, I think that the most discouraging thing about budgeting is if you don't know what realm your spending is, you're
mhm.
either going to be way, way under or
Yeah,
way over, and you're not going to have an accurate or obtainable budget. It's
yeah,
just, so yeah, getting a good idea of what spending looks like before, I definitely agree with you, is a
yeah.
huge, huge part of it.
And then you all of a sudden realize like 50% of your income goes towards food and eating out. And you're like, maybe I need to make some changes there.
Right, right.
But when you start to budget in college, it really sets you up for your transition into adulthood. And just thinking about that, the things that are coming ahead of you. In college, it seems like you have a lot of expenses. And again, it looks different for everybody. You might have a lot of expenses that you need to take care of while you're in college. But I know for me, there was certain things that I wasn't spending money on then that now that I'm out of college, it's like was a rude awakening of how much everything costs. You have your phone
Mhm.
bills and your car insurance, which is just a lot of money. Payments for your car, your student debt repayments, your health insurance, rent, groceries. It all adds up very quickly, and you see your
Yes,
money come
very
in,
quickly.
you see your money go out, and it's good to be prepared for that. And so there's some helpful apps that you can use to budget while you're in college.
One of the apps my mom actually introduced me to is the app called Mint, um, and it works by taking your debit card transactions, credit card transactions, you link up your bank accounts with it, and it will track based on the merchant where you spend your money. So it's a little bit easier to see, are you spending your money on clothes? Are you spending it on food? Um, the things that it doesn't really pick up on are going to be those like kind of in between things. So say, you're going out to eat at a restaurant, that might be one
Mhm.
thing, but if you have something more, if you want to budget that more as entertainment, it's not going to really be totally accurate. And
Okay.
then you think about too, like for me, my rent comes right out of my bank account. And so that is not always
Mhm.
accurate, but it's a great way to at least start tracking your expenses and kind of like as you were talking about earlier, come up with that baseline spending habits.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. So I think a common theme that we've come across, Rachel, is that as a young adult, it's really important for us to form these habits while we're young,
Mhm.
just to make sure, that it's sustainable in the future. Um, and another important thing I have learned is that try your best not to spend money that you're not making. Um, a super
Mhm.
easy way to do this is credit cards, and then you're worried about then you're gonna have to budget for
Yep.
paying those down, paying those back.
Exactly. With a what, like 26%
An
interest rate. Like
insane interest rate.
it's a
Uh,
losing battle.
right, right. So I know that there's going to be things like if you decide to go to school, go to university, um, there's more than likely, I mean, I had to take out loans for that. Um, and obviously, I didn't have that money beforehand, but that is
Mhm.
a little bit more of a
Well, you're gonna get a return on your investment
right,
with
right,
what you put into college. So say you come out with $50,000 in loans from college, they say on average those with a degree versus those without a degree make 15% more even in the same role. So like you're going to get that money back. It's not the same as if I want to buy a pair of Prada shoes and put $800 on my credit card. Like I'm not seeing that $800 again.
right, right. Yeah, there's that. I was thinking interest rate is much lower too for
Oh, mhm.
um,
Oh yeah.
those kinds of things. I don't know if everyone understands. If you don't
Mhm.
have the money to pay off your credit card in full, it's going to add up really, really quick.
Yep. Yeah. It gets a lot of people in trouble. We have four popular budgeting strategies that we're going to talk about today. And these four are not all inclusive. This is not all of the budgeting strategies that exist out there, but these are four of the kind of well adopted ones that people talk about. And you really have to find what works for you ultimately. These are all great options. Some of them are not ones that I would prefer for myself, but they're ones that my roommates in college used. And so different things work for everybody. And you just need to find something that you're going to be able to stick with.
Yeah, so the first budgeting method would be the 50/30/20 budget. And this budget allots for 50% of needs. Think of this as your groceries, rent or mortgage payments if you have that, utilities, that kind of thing. 30% for wants. You see that sweater at the store.
Mhm.
30% waiting for it, and then the last 20% of your income um, for savings and debt repayments.
Mhm. But are you sure the sweater's not a need?
Right, that's where you're gonna have to really, distinguish the categories for yourself. Um,
Mhm. Yep,
so for me, needs,
definitely.
I would definitely, at least in a starting budget, would need to allot for eating out because it is
Mhm.
something I do really regularly, and if I add it as a want,
Mhm.
I would have to limit myself, but
Yep.
it's something that I'm not ready to
Yeah.
put in that
Cut out.
category,
Uh-huh,
so
exactly. Especially when I mean, when you're new in your career and you're working, like, sometimes you do need to do that, like, you might have an event or something after
Right.
work, and you so
Or the
sometimes
times
you
that
do
I get
need
to
that.
right, or, like, the one dinner I'll have a week with a friend that's
Mhm.
usually our time we see each other, and
Yep.
not something I'm willing to put in the want category, so
Mhm.
this is all definitely up to the individual and whatever you think you need, as
Mhm.
long as you stick to it.
Yep, definitely. The next one is the envelope system or the cash only system. And with this budget, at the beginning of the month, you withdraw cash from your bank account and you split it up into different categories. So you're going to have an envelope for your rent or your mortgage, an envelope for your car payment, an envelope for gas. You're going to split those things into envelopes. If you pay for those things in cash, you probably don't realistically pay for rent in cash. So that one might not be able to have an envelope. But say you did, you'd split those all up. And so you would see the physical money. And the money that's in that envelope is the only money you're allowed to use during the month for each of those categories. And so this system is helpful if you tend to make a lot of impulse buying decisions, but it is also not the most convenient in terms of using your money, which is really the point of it. But I think it's one that's not one that I am interested in doing just because I don't carry any cash on me ever. And I don't I don't want to change that in the
Right.
future. But
Yeah.
this is something that my roommate did in college and it worked really well with her because she did a lot of online shopping for clothes and stuff. Like late at night, she'd go and blow through $200 on like clothes for fall and stuff that she didn't need. And so this cash strategy allowed her to see the money that she had and then only use that money. So if you're trying to save or if you're just trying to kind of do like a budget reset, this can be a good option, but it may not be the most sustainable long term. Like it's probably not something you're going to do for your entire life.
Right, and I think that that's something that's super important that you just brought up, that it's probably not gonna be the method that you'll use, into your 30s, 40s, 50s,
Mhm.
and on, but, um, I would say if you do have, your primary income is cash, let's say you're a server at a
Mhm.
restaurant, this could be a good, opportunity for you as well. Um, just
Yeah,
remember to save and not don't forget about the saving part. If all of your money
definitely.
comes cash and there's still going to be those, um, you're still going to have to put money in the bank and put money
Mhm.
in savings or whatever you
Yep.
might decide. But it also might
Yeah.
save you a trip to the bank. So,
Yeah, it's good for seasons of your life. It's even I think something my mom did for maybe a year, while we were a little bit younger. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I think it just made things easier for her in that specific season, but it's not something she does anymore, so
I could definitely see implementing this method for me personally, in little increments. So maybe for my groceries, maybe I'll start off by taking some cash out, and that's just my cash for groceries, and
yeah.
I can go a little
There's
bit overboard in the in the
yeah.
grocery store. So
Groceries are so expensive right now, though. Me and my husband have been doing HelloFresh for the last, like, what, probably 6 months, and that
mhm.
was really expensive, and so this was the first week that we were like, "Oh, we'll just use one of the recipes from there, like, we'll go buy all of our own groceries," and it was still, like, $90 for a week of our groceries,
Well,
and
yeah,
meat.
and
Meat is so expensive. I'm like, "I should just be a vegan because this is a lot of money."
yeah, it does add up really fast. And the other thing about that is if you're buying certain ingredients just for a recipe, trying
Mhm.
to puzzle piece where you're going to use the extra so it doesn't go bad
Yep.
is like a
Yeah.
game. It's like a
It's, like,
brain
impossible.
teaser. Yeah.
One of ours, it was like, "You need apricot jam," and I'm like, "Well, first off, the grocery store doesn't have apricot jam, and I'm never gonna use that again. So I was like, "Whatever, we'll just go without it," and it was fine.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, then the next budgeting strategy we have is the pay yourself first. And with this budget, you decide how much you're wanting to put in your savings and retirement accounts first. And then, as that money, use the rest of the money for bills and other costs. Um, One thing that's super important that I don't think people realize is that if you don't have a savings account, you definitely want to start one. Um,
Mhm.
and it's generally recommended to have a little bit of an emergency fund, a little bit of a cushion, and think of this as, you know, 2 to 5 months of living expenses and necessities. And
Yep.
one thing about this budget is it's not the strictest budget, but it still prioritizes building up savings accounts and building up those emergency funds and, like we were talking about earlier, retirement funds for the future.
Mhm. This, out of all of the budgets, is the one that I can see myself doing the most and the one that I think my husband and I are gonna try to implement because we're trying to save up right now for a down payment for a house, and so we need to be saving, like, a considerable amount of money each month, and so if the money goes straight from, like goes straight direct deposit into savings, whatever chunk that I want in savings, then it, like, just stays there, and it can be a good way to be held accountable for actually saving the money and not letting it get away from you and spending it elsewhere, so
And I think that you again just brought up another really important thing is that if your place of work offers direct deposit, it's a great way to um, use that in your budgeting, and you're never gonna
Mhm.
have that desire to cash your check and keep 200
Yep.
for yourself just because you went to a
Yep.
bank or you did it, you whatever. So that's definitely
Yep.
something too. If you can automatically split it up between accounts,
Mhm.
it's super helpful. And
Yeah, definitely helpful when you're trying to save. The last budgeting strategy we're gonna talk about today is the zero-based budget, and this one requires some very detailed planning on the front end and then requires periods of adjustment throughout the year, as you better understand yourself and your spending. And so with this budget, you allot every dollar from your monthly income to a specific spending category, including savings. So you are going to decide exactly how much money you plan to spend on gas, how much you plan to spend on groceries, how much you plan. And then obviously your things that don't change as much, like your rent or your utilities, things like that. And then you really just allot everything so you have nothing left over at the end. And the idea is it's supposed to keep you from doing more wasteful spending. If everything's allotted, including your savings, you don't have wiggle room to go do other things. And
this
this
one
one's
sounds
not
a lot more difficult.
like almost impossible. I thought when I
Yeah,
was researching it, it's like I don't know how much I'm going to spend on gas in the month. I don't know how much gas is going to cost in 2 weeks. Like
right, exactly. So I think this would be great if majority of your spending is just fixed. But when
yep.
it comes to those variable things, like you were saying, gas.
Mhm.
The other day I was up in Dork County and gas was over $5, and then I came back down here and
What?
yeah, so I filled it up like before I even got into the county, but it was
Yeah.
a whole more than a whole dollar more up there.
Why? That blows my mind because that's still in Wisconsin, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Huh.
It was really
Oh,
expensive.
wow.
It was crazy. I was like, luckily I filled up before I went all the way up there, but
Mhm.
for my friends that do live up there,
Yeah,
they
that's tough.
they resort to mostly walking and biking everywhere,
Yeah.
or at least when
Huh.
they can. But something like that, if you have an unforeseen travel expense, even like
Yep.
gas has just been crazy. It's been all over the charts. So
Yep. Right now over here, it's pretty cheap. I think I was on a walk at lunch today and I saw 388 and I was pretty excited. It's like
and
that's the
then
least I've seen
you
it.
compare that to lacrosse, and we're down. I think I filled up my tank yesterday for 349.
Oh, that's so exciting because
Yeah,
that means we're moving that way.
right, right. Um, yeah. So this kind of budget is very intricate, and I feel like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
It's
If
gonna
it's
be
something
something.
like if that's your personality type and like that's something you enjoy doing, then this could be a great option. But if it's not, I think it would pretty much be impossible.
I was gonna
So,
say the only thing I can think of if you're hoping to use all of it is what kind of little expenses are you gonna have in there just to hopefully meet your goal.
mhm. Yeah.
But what if you come in under for a month? So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's
It's definitely
definitely
tricky.
something. So yeah, it definitely is a little bit of a harder one, but at the same time, I think it could be pretty therapeutic for some. So budgeting wise in the news, according to the US government's Consumer Price Index, inflation is currently at 8.5%, which I don't think surprises many of us. We've all seen prices go
Mhm.
up with everything,
Yep.
groceries, rent. My rent's gone up.
My rent went up too. It was very
Um,
sad.
right, gas, like I even eggs, like I remember when eggs were like $1 and now they're
Yeah.
like $4.
Yes. Last time we went to the grocery store, we said the same thing. We were like, "Wait, when did eggs get so expensive?"
And that's really where I realize it because I don't eat a ton of meat. I don't really
Mhm.
eat dairy at all, but like eggs is
Yep.
something I buy pretty consistently, and it's
Yeah.
shocking.
I was just gonna
Like,
say, and that makes it even more important to kind of choose how you want to budget and then stick to that because as costs around us are rising, most of the time your salary isn't rising at that same rate. And so you
right.
have to be more cognizant of how you're spending and potentially make some cuts to what you're doing and what you're spending money on to allow you to kind of stay at that same standard of living.
Yeah, so there are a couple ways that you can help budget yourself or help maintain your budget as inflation rises or as we live in this expensive time.
Mhm.
And one of those is cutting out unnecessary subscriptions. So I know for me during COVID, my family really racked up those streaming services. Um, we had nothing to do, so
Yep.
Netflix, Hulu, HBO, you name it. I think we probably had it or at least tried it. And now
Mhm.
that life's back to fairly normal, we're back
Yeah.
to our usual Netflix and Hulu.
Mhm.
But all of those other ones no longer
Yep.
no longer there, but it's saving everyone money. And another thing I think about too is all of the like paid apps I have that I don't even realize
Mhm.
I'm paying for. I have like a recipe app that I just realized I'm paying $36
Oh my
every
gosh.
year for.
Oh,
And
every
I
year. I thought you were
every year,
saying
not
every
every
month.
month.
I was like,
Oh
that's an expensive subscription.
no, no, not that long, but there's subscriptions everywhere.
Yeah, Apple does a good job of if you go, you can go and see like a list of all of your expense or all of your subscriptions and you can like unsubscribe from them all right on that page.
And I think this also brings us into shopping smarter at the grocery store. Rachel, you and I already kind of talked about that, but
Mhm.
you don't always have to buy the name brand. You can buy the generic. It tastes exactly the same and
Yeah.
it saves
Except
you.
for Oreos. Or generic Oreos do not taste the same.
Well, there that's important. That's important to know. So,
Yep.
um, and then the last thing is you can always increase your income. I mean, we mentioned earlier babysitting,
Hmm.
mowing lawns around your neighborhood, dog walking is super easy. I did Instacart for a while.
Oh, yep.
Um, I could just pick my hours and
Yeah.
get paid
There's
for it.
DoorDash.
DoorDash.
That's an easy
So
one.
all of these things you can use.
Yeah. I started during this last year just like reselling clothes online. That's a really easy way to make some extra money to try to combat inflation and try to just keep up with it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of easy creative ways. I know some people will do like Etsy stores. If you can graphic design it all, you can sell stuff on there.
Yeah, there's a ton of different ways to do it, and a lot of them aren't insanely time consuming, and can be fun. So
Hmm.
definitely an option.
Yep. So next up, we are going to be speaking with a guest from Coulee Bank, and he's going to be discussing some of his personal budgeting philosophies. So, joining us, we have Eric Gatz. He is a retail banking manager at Coulee Bank based in Rochester, Minnesota. Thanks for joining us, Eric.
Thank you. It's been a very good day here in Rochester, and I'm excited to be here sharing this podcast with you guys today.
Well, thanks for being here.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. Not really sure exactly where to start, but I guess a good place to start is just to give a little background about how I got into the banking business. So I have been in Rochester now for just over half my life, and I started in Rochester in the blue collar world. You kind of name a job in the blue collar world, I've probably done it in one shape
Hmm.
or form or another. In fact, I just was chatting with a gentleman who opened up an account with us who taught me how to drive school bus. So, again, I've done a little bit of everything. I decided to jump into the finance world about 5 years ago. And in fact, it's coming up on 6 years now
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to be a financial advisor. And during that time, I learned everything from basic budgeting to helping people to protect their future when it comes to having the proper insurances in place,
Mm-hmm.
to building an overall plan for them so that they can build their money and be in retirement and be successful in retirement when they get to that place where they're not wondering, how am I going to make it from day to day because I'm not working a job anymore?
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved that job. But as of about 2.5 years ago, I just found myself not being able to continue in that position. So, of course, I started looking around going, well, what can I continue to do in the world of finance,
Mm-hmm.
but not from the standpoint of a financial advisor? And I had a friend who worked here at Coulee Bank. I asked him about the bank, and he raved and ranted about how great it was. And I said, okay, well, maybe I should give them a shot and see if they'll give me a shot. And that was in April of 2020, and I was hired about a month later. A little bit more about myself. I am married, been married 14 and a half years. I have two beautiful little boys. One is 10, one is 6.5. And then in the next couple of weeks here, we're going to add a third boy. My wife is currently 38 weeks pregnant. So
Wow.
I might get the
Congrats.
call, who knows, in the next few minutes for all I know.
That's super exciting. 3 boys. That's a household.
Yes, it is. If you guys know of anywhere that I can find a shirt that says "Boy Mom" with the little 3 up top, "Boy Mom cubed,"
Yep.
I'd love to get my wife a shirt like that.
All I can say is that I'm sure you can find something on Etsy. They have
Oh,
really
Etsy.
everything, everything.
Everything.
I have not spent a whole lot of time on Etsy. I might have to check that out.
So, today we've just been talking all about budgeting, kind of the different strategies for budgeting, why it's important, especially in your younger years. So, as a teenager, and then as a college student, and then as a young adult coming out of college or just entering into your first job, why budgeting is important in those different parts of your life. So we were wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started budgeting.
Yeah, this is a question that definitely is extremely important to me because of how I started my adult life. I came out of high school knowing the basics of like balancing a checkbook, but who does that these days, right? And I knew that it was important, of course, to have money in your account when you wrote a check. But the reason why finance has been so deep in my heart and in my life is I was about 6 to 9 months on my own. I moved to Rochester 3 months after I turned 18, and I bounced my first 3 checks. It was about 9 months into living here. And I had to make those embarrassing phone calls to my mom, to my dad, and eventually, because my mom and dad couldn't help me, to my grandparents. And luckily, they bailed me out, helped me, but I made a promise to myself, stood my ground, and said, I will never make a phone call like that again. So, of course, that meant I needed a plan. Well, my plan was just to keep an eye on my bank account and make sure that I was making smart decisions. But when I got married, all of a sudden, I got connected with another individual who had a different idea when it came to money. So we decided we needed to do that cursed word, that B word, budget. So many people these days consider that a curse word. You say budget, how dare you? Where I learned my budgeting was I typed in budget tools online and I found a lot of different budget tools. Mint.com was something that really helped my wife and I. But where we got some of our best advice, I'm sure you've heard of him, is a man by the name of Dave Ramsey. And Dave Ramsey has a lot of great tools out there for people who are budgeting. And one of the tools that we came across was what he calls the, let me see if I can remember the exact name of it, every dollar budget tool.
Okay.
And that is that every dollar has a name. Every dollar is going somewhere, is doing something very specific, that you're not just leaving some money hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, and again, this is stealing from him, having a budget is telling your money what to do instead of wondering where it went.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't have a budget, you get to the end of the month and you start to go, where did all my money go? I made a lot of money this month.
Yep.
And you start to go, where did my money go? I don't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if you have a budget, you're now telling your money what to do at the beginning of the month so that when you get to the end, all the money is in its proper place. And that's really what budgeting has meant to me, because we had times in our life where I was working 2 or 3 different jobs just to make sure that we not only were making ends meet, but we were paying off a lot of debt that we had when our marriage was started. So budgeting has been something that's gotten us, in fact, in a 3-year period, we paid over $55,000 off of student loan debt,
Wow.
car debt,
That's awesome.
and a lot of other different things because we stuck so strongly to a budget.
Yeah, that's a great just example of what can be possible if you do take those steps to
and how
budget.
how powerful it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When people think about budget, they think, well, now I can't have any fun. But that's not true. If you build the fun into your budget and it makes fiscal sense, then you absolutely can have fun. In fact, you give yourself permission to have fun when you build that into your budget. In fact, we often have categories for, we know we're going to go on a vacation in a year or in 2 years or something like that. Or, you know what? My son is going to be having a birthday, and I know that we're going to need to buy balloons and we're going to need to buy cake. We're going to need to buy presents. So we have a gift category where we either save money for a gift or we will plan ahead of time knowing that we're going to need to set aside a certain amount of money when it comes to the months that have birthdays in our family.
So what kind of budgeting, I mean, it's super cool that you're good at this, and I feel like there's a lot that I can learn, and I'm sure everyone else can learn from this, but what do you
Mm-hmm.
kind of do to stay on top of your budget, or what kind of strategy do you use?
Yeah, so when it comes to the every dollar budget, the best strategy to have is when you get to the beginning of a month, you sit down sometime either the last couple days of the month or the first couple days of the month, and you look at what am I going to make this month? You write that down at the top of the paper, and then you get to what are my fixed expenses. And of course, fixed expenses have everything from if you have a house, you have a mortgage, if you have an apartment, you have rent, heat, water, lights, all that kind of stuff is going to be fixed expenses. And of course, if you have things like your Netflix account, your Hulu account, your Amazon account, all that kind of stuff is going to be fixed expenses because it's going to be something you're going to be paying for every single month. It has a fixed amount and you know it's going to be coming out of your bank account. Once you get to the end of those expenses, then you get to your non-fixed, I guess would be one way to put it, or your expenses that can go up and down throughout the month. So now we're talking things like food. We need to go to the grocery store every single month. Maybe you plan to eat out a couple times a week, or you go to $5. I mean, Starbucks on a regular basis, because that's what it costs you is $5, right?
More than that
And
now.
yes, yeah, it's more like $8 or something like that. How specialized do you get it, right? When you have those categories, those ones take a few months. So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice. When you start a budget, don't give up on it after 1 month if you failed. You need to give it 3, 4, or 5 months because those expenses that go up and down, whether they're food, eating out, things like that, that change from month to month, you need to adjust those things. So if I'm going to put an extra $100 toward my student loans this month, but you get toward the end of the month and you need to buy some more groceries, maybe you're only going to end up putting $50 extra toward that student loan to get your debt paid off. So you need to adjust those things as each month goes. And once you get to that third or fourth month, it really just gets a lot more simple. You're looking at your budget less because you're used to what it is that you have. Then, of course, if something happens, you get a raise at work, you pick up that extra job, doing a little bit of DoorDash, or you start an online page and you're selling stuff online, whatever it is that you decide to do, then you can start adjusting your budget a little more often. But really, the big point on it is to stay on top of it and not give up. Oftentimes, people start a budget and then they get 6 weeks, 7 weeks in, they rip it all up, they get frustrated, and then they just don't know what to do and give up on it. When that's really the time for you to grind it down, go, all right, not starting over, but what's gone well so far, and how can I adjust a few things to make sure that the next budget I write fits me better than when I first started doing this.
That's great advice. That's even helpful advice for
Yeah.
Rachel and Emma from 20 minutes ago. We were talking about this type of budget and just questioning how does
Get
something like that
started.
work? How do you
Right.
expense each individual thing? But it sounds like it takes some time to get it all set and put together and get it really solid.
Yeah, and almost nobody's going to have a perfect budget when they first start. You're going to write stuff down and you're going to go, well, I think I spend $200 a month on groceries.
Mhm.
And then you'll get 2.5 weeks in and you'll go, I've already spent $200.
Yep.
I need some more money. What am I going to do? And that's when you have, if you're married, of course, you have a committee meeting with whoever you're married with. If you're not married, you have a committee meeting with yourself and you start to go, what needs to change? Because I went over my budget when it came to food. And sometimes it might just be what it is you're purchasing, but we need food, so we can't go without it.
Yep.
And other times it's, I need to move a few things from a few categories to readjust.
Mm-hmm.
So, question for myself, just because I'm super interested. How do you keep track of this? Do you have an Excel sheet? Do you write it down in a physical spot? I just don't know how I would. I don't know. I'm interested, so I don't know how I would even get started.
Yeah, these are absolutely great questions. And everybody is a little different. So I can't say that there's a perfect answer for that. I have friends who are complete nerds, which is fine. I love them just the same. And they love Excel spreadsheets. Love Excel spreadsheets. I don't mind them. I think they're a lot of fun, but I don't do that all the time. When I first started, it was all about pen and pencil and paper for me. I had a notebook. I actually have a notebook back from, I believe it was it was May of 2008. So I had just been married for 2 years or 2 months, excuse me. And that was the first time I had written a budget. And I saw what my wife and I made on a monthly basis. And I went, wow, how did we survive? But of course, now all of our expenses are just a lot higher and a lot more. So it doesn't feel like a lot has changed. But the point being is we went from pen and paper to when we downloaded Every Dollar that's the Dave Ramsey one.
Yep.
He has an app and something that works very well with the computer. So my wife and I both downloaded the apps and we started putting things in there. And anytime that we would purchase something that fit into a category, if we remembered, we would open the app and put what we purchased in the app. Of course, if we didn't, at the end of the week, we would go through our expenses, see what we spent in that category, and then readjust.
Okay.
But there's a
Cool.
lot of different ways that fit a lot of different people. And I feel like nowadays the best way really is some kind of an app. We always have our phones with us. They're
Right.
always in front of us. And if you can be on top of it, it's pretty easy just to go, okay, I just spent $60 on groceries. Now I have this much left.
Last question we have for you. How would you say your values influence the way you budget your money?
This is a really deep question because I don't know if there's an absolute perfect answer for this,
Mm-hmm.
but there are things in our life that we value very highly. And because of that, we refuse to adjust certain categories. So, one of those categories that we have is that we tithe to a church on a regular basis. And for us, that means different people, that means different things. For us specifically, that means 10% of our income that we are giving back to our church on a regular basis. So that is something that automatically comes out. We never adjust that category. A second thing is our boys go to a private school here in Rochester. And I can tell you that that is something that we talk to each other about regularly because we know that if we weren't spending that money at a private school, we could be going on vacations more often. We could be buying that pontoon or that boat.
Yeah.
We could be buying that RV and traveling a lot more. But our value is that our boys have a proper education, and the type of education that we really value is a high level of education. And because of that, we will cut back in certain categories and go on less vacations and eat out a little less because we value the fact that they are going to the type of school that we value and want to be a part of. So when you look at our budget, it's going to look completely different than somebody else's who their kids go to a public school and maybe they don't have a church that they give to or tithe to. Maybe they give in a different way. And so their categories are going to be a lot more spread out and a lot different. But we feel as though we scrape together money in other areas, and I will often pick up another job or volunteer to do something where somebody will pay me $100 to help them move or things like that, because we want to make sure that we continue to do the things that are important to us and to our family. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we don't go on vacations, because we do. But we have to plan them out further in advance. We have to budget for them for a while. We have to save for them. And then, of course, we have a blast and we cherish every moment of it when we do those things.
Definitely. I was going to say, it seems like those values and those kind of categories that you talked about only grow and get bigger as you get older, because currently for like Emma and I, we don't have kids or families. And so we don't have some of those things to think about or take into account. And so it's something that when you're young and you're setting yourself for budgeting, you can think of that in the future, and just be gaining those skills when you're young so that you can use them
Yes.
later on in life.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things, and this is, I don't know if I want to just say like a free bit of advice for those that are a good 10 to 20 years younger than me, and that would be take advantage of the fact that you're younger and don't have all those extra things that you're attached to. Don't get me wrong, I would never give up my family
Yep.
or my boys or anything like that. But if I saved more when I was younger, my, retirement accounts would look a lot better. If I saved for specific things, I would probably have certain things paid off a lot sooner in my life and would be able to enjoy other things. But I valued going out to eat with my friends. I valued playing video games and buying video games. And those things are fun for the moment. But 20 years down the line, I look back and go, I didn't get a whole lot out of that except for entertainment.
Yeah. Whew, what a convicting conversation.
Hey, and there's nothing wrong with entertainment. Like I said, when you budget for it, it's there.
Yep.
But at the same time, like one of the things that I value when it comes to Coulee is the fact that they give us such a great match.
Mm-hmm.
And I challenge every person younger than me, which is probably half the staff, to at least make the match. You're giving away free money if you're not getting the match. And I've met a few individuals who say, but I just can't afford it. And I'm like, no, actually you can't afford not to, because saving at a younger stage of life is so much more important than when you get a little bit older. Not saying it's not important. It's just you can get so much more value out of your money.
Right.
Yep. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining us, Eric. I think you had a lot of helpful knowledge and information that is very prevalent. And I feel like Emma and I both learned a lot in the last 15 minutes.
Definitely. It's crazy. I
Well,
feel
good.
like I could just redo everything. And I'm like, I'm knowledgeable now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. And one plug, if you don't mind me doing that, I'll say here, will be anybody that steps foot into my office, I offer these kind of conversations with them. I enjoy these kind of conversations. Since I've been here at Coulee, I've had multiple people that say they're struggling with money or budgeting or not sure how to do A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
And I will sit down, print out a budget, and I will walk through everything with them, because that is something I value, and I believe it grows a relationship that we can have with our customers. I just believe it's important for everyone to have a good hold on their money, their expenses, and what they're doing, so that they don't get to the end of the month and they're just hoping that their paycheck was a few dollars more, or wondering what they're going to do when it comes to being able to feed themselves or their family. It's an important conversation to have. And though it doesn't really have that much to do with banking, it has a lot to do with finances. And that's the world that we're in.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for joining us. We were so happy to have you.
Yes, thank you, Eric.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys asking me to be a part of this, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Thanks so much for listening.
I think we can all agree that Eric offered some really great advice for us regarding his experience budgeting and some great tips and tricks for us to get started.
Yep, we hope you tune in next time and look forward to our next episode. This podcast was brought to you by Coulee Bank, member FDIC.